Welcome, Walnut. I'm Lara, but you can call me Laz, your host for Walnut Wednesday. This is your reminder to be brave, be yourself, and know that you can make the world a better place just by what you decide today. Here, I'm going to share my weekly walnuttings with you on a Wednesday. Hi Walnut, welcome to another episode of Walnut Wednesday. It is me, your host Laz, and I am here for episode 155 with the beautiful, delicious, nutritious, every 10-ish episodes, my best friend, Kate Bromley. Welcome.
Oh, hello. Good to be back.
So happy to have you. So, Walnut, Kate and I have just been sort of talking offline, and the general theme that we've both sort of been discussing is the topic of change. Now, we've talked in the past about sort of growing pains and like how pretty much all of the episodes, right, Kate, that we've had, they all mesh sort of into one and relate to walnutting in various different ways. But for me at the moment, Walnut, I'm going through changes. Like there's a lot, I feel a lot going on, and I will share with you in a different setting or potentially on a solo episode. But there's a shift in the air, and you might be feeling it too, Walnut, I think astrologically and all the things, where things are feeling frantic, but I think it's more in a snowball mind frantic way. It's more like a shift. I feel like I'm going through a bit of a transitional shift. And if you remember earlier in the year of 2022, depending when you're listening to this, I was having that Weltschmerz saga, and I think Kate, we even talked about it on an episode together. It feels like that, but it's less about losing faith in humanity, while it is a little aspect of it, but more about this like internal cellular transition and growth. And Kate, I know you're having sort of similar things. It's like it's affecting relationships and how you see things. It's like a different lens almost that my eyes are having. Kate, I'll get you to talk about how you're feeling in regards to sort of change.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I think you're right. It's like we've kind of gone on this, we've gone on the life cycle of it all together. Not that it's like had its full life cycle, but I think feeling like that down the dumps and then working through that, like how do you deal with those kind of lows, and then feeling like growing pains and sort of like pressing your elbows against the walls and being like, I need more room. Like, how do you kind of, change your surroundings, or, growing pains is sort of like noticing things are happening and reacting to it different. And now I think we're the same, but it's almost like if you were like, this is really lame, but in so many like comic books or like X-Men or whatever, people before they get like their powers get like headaches or they feel terrible, and that's like depression. And then there's sort of like this growth thing where it like releases. But usually it's like kind of out of control, right? When you're saying like lenses, like, shooting lasers out your eyeballs, but not knowing how to control them yet. And I feel like that's sort of what's happened. It's sort of like bursting through, but it's not perfect yet. Like I think we're coming into our power, but we can see that it's there and feel that it's there in a way maybe that like it was just being hinted at before, or was actually being burdensome of before. And that sounds very lofty, and people might be being like, what power? But like just internal, I think both of us are sort of feeling a little bit more like, all right, this, system in place and this education or this job or whatever, this framework, that was great, but now I'm not sure I need it. And in fact, maybe it's holding me back now. And and that can be, like you say, kind of hectic, kind of frantic, kind of like, am I gonna destroy shit along the way to work it out? So yeah, that's kind of a very, like I say, kind of lofty first go at explaining, I think, some of the conversations we've been having, some of the feelings we've been feeling.
Yeah, totally. And I know that Kate, you and I have this a lot, but Walnut, I actually have been noticing that the people I'm having conversations with who are not in the Walnut collective are feeling it as well. And it's actually real weird, because I feel like not like a master, but I feel like I have evidence and have learned from all my walnuttings that I actually have really good advice to give. Like, I two people that come to mind at the top of my head, I think yesterday or the day before, literally had someone talking to me about, she was getting so cross that she is always the person that chooses kindness over blah blah blah, and coming from a really people pleasery place where she basically got walked all over, and like, listen to my past episodes, basically that. And I was able to give her really solid advice, or at least just this understanding that I feel like is hard to kind of come by. And then I had another person sort of very upset call me and saying things like, I'm always the person that's there, always organizing, always doing the stuff. And I'm the person that gets the passive aggressive shutdowns, gets the private message outside of the group to ask me to do extra things and all this stuff. And there's this like, it's like this pain that's just bubbling up to the surface on a collective level. And I know, Kate, you've had some sort of conversations really similar as well. Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I've had some really good chats and challenging conversations, but like good, healthy ones where people are also like seeking out different viewpoints and things. But also, you just reminded me of a friend of mine who I've not been in touch with for a while. I've been thinking about her, and then she messaged me that day. And I mean, that happens. It's so weird, but that happens. And we had this really great chat, and she has been through the ringer. Like, she's had a relationship end, and outwardly has been kind of doing all the right things, throwing herself into, activities and work and passion projects, and been on top of it all, so understanding of the partner, the ex, who like fucked her over, man. Like, whatever the reasons, that was the outcome. And yeah, when it came to like sort of a conversation, or maybe not quite advice, but just, sharing of ideas, I was kind of like, you don't have to be angry at them, but you can also allow yourself to be angry. You don't have to rise above it without kind of sitting in the shit, or not in that depressive way, but sort of maybe more like the laser out the eyes rampage thing. It's like, it's bubbling up in there. Like, and I said, I was like, have you ever considered, I know it's been tough, but maybe taking some time for yourself, go to the beach and like scream into the waves or something, or just like, live a few days literally just with yourself and see what you find. And it wasn't like a go do it, but I was kind of like, I really hope she does.
Yeah.
And she did. And she messaged me being like, I spent some time, I realized I do like my own company. And she hadn't been giving herself that chance to find it out. And I was just so pleased. Like, it's not like it's all fixed or anything, but it was that thing of being like, yeah, all the things we kind of talked about, those will put yourself on the list, find healthy ways to let out anger. You can be selfish in a non-aggressive, it's not a mean thing all the time, like to be selfish in every single way. And all of those sort of lessons. And I was like gently being like, acknowledge yourself, and it's okay to be angry. You don't have to lash out at people, but anger can be expressed in a way that like is good for your body to let it out, like leaching out poison. So yeah, I mean, that was, it just came to me, but it was just so lovely to hear that, it was helpful to her, and she deserves to be kind of free. I feel like it's very freeing, this kind of change.
Yes. And I think also I'm noticing a trend that we're saying she and stuff, that it's quite a woman thing in terms of expressing emotions. Like one thing that I just felt called to sort of mention, Walnut, is emotions are not who you are. They are meant to be felt, and moved through your physical an energetic body, energy in motion, emotion, right? So like, I think especially for me as a woman, I feel like it has been really hard to express how I feel, not only through my voice, but in actual doing stuff. The more I kind of try and keep emotion in, the more like resentment I feel towards the whole world, my whole world, right? Everything. And so I think this is actually a really good reminder, Walnut, to like look at, are you like keeping things in, and how can you express them in like a nourishing way? I had an experience, I was talking to Kate offline just before, where I expressed the emotion anger in a really not healthy way, but I felt liberated. Like I physically threw a thing, and it was a really weird moment because I always think about it. You know, you and Kate and I were talking about this, right? We were talking about how those moments where you think in your head, what if I just punched a hole in the wall? And it's a very fleeting thought, but you don't actually do it. And I had that moment. I was like, what if I just throw this thing on the floor really hard? And I did it. And it was not appropriate. And I don't believe that we should physically, you know, damage things to feel better. But it was kind of like I had that experimentation with myself. Obviously, I was in a safe place and no one got hurt and nothing got broken or anything. But I just wanted to release something. And that was a cue for me to be like, there's some stuff I need to work through here.
And that's it. I think, well, we talked about like, you know, sometimes you have to break something to make something new, or break something to, you know, rebuild, or just break something to fucking break free, I suppose. And not, again, not like bones or people or anything, but
Yeah.
like sometimes it's like being like, what if I did do the thing that I never do, like, you know, in my friend's scenario, which would just be like taking time for myself, which maybe people think they would never want to do. Maybe they wouldn't, but then they know, and it's not this kind of what if. And I think we've been so shackled to like, or like work, you know, oh, what if I did try working for myself? And maybe it does, sometimes it works out, maybe it doesn't, but then you kind of know, and maybe that leads you to something else. And that thing of being like, you know, the term rock bottom or whatever, and maybe there isn't really a rock bottom, like you've said before, I think, but like maybe it's just a case of being like, this isn't fun to sink anymore, so I'm going to break it, and it might go up, might go down, might go sideways, but it'll be different, whatever it is. And I think that's kind of like you say, it's quite liberating, because you're trying something, you're shaking it up. And so for me, like, freedom is a really big part of all of this stuff. And that can be as psychological as it can be, you know, in action or in reality. I can feel like I'm less free when there are too many plans. It stresses me out, or it's weird, polarizing, because I plan for a living. Basically, that's what production is. But you know, when my life feels like there's too many commitments too far forward, that I don't have that flexibility for doing something, again, selfishly for myself, but in a nice, like, resting, rejuvenation kind of way, I start to feel really like a caged animal. And the ridiculous thing is, they're not even bad things that necessarily make me feel a little bit locked in. Like this year, still with the aftermath of COVID and lockdown and stuff, a lot of really wonderful events were happening this year for me. My cousin's wedding in France, and my parents coming over, and my sister's 30th, my mom's 60th, lots of travel, lots of plans, brilliant time, wonderful time with my family, and like amazing memories. And when I came back, the thing that didn't come with me was post-holiday blues. I was like, it's like I could stretch. I was like, I've done all those things with everyone else that was like great, but also pre-planned for them, quite rigid. I didn't feel like I could sort of free my mind to what else is out there. What do I want to do for the next XYZ amount of time? Because I was just kind of like focusing on the next thing that had been in the books for ages. And so when I came back, I was like, now what do I do? But in a really fun way. And it was just like, my first thought was like, I think I need to go traveling on my own for like however long. Or I think, I need to throw myself into some projects that I've been putting off, which we'll get to. But it was just interesting. Anyway, that's what I've found recently. And that's been sort of maybe the trigger or the catalyst for feeling change or transformation, which is basically being like, only because my brain's been kind of cleared of other stuff. And I think a lot of people don't, maybe they just don't ever take a moment to breathe. They just kind of continue on, and the stuff for them is literally every day or every week or every month of every year. There's always a thing, or their whole life is the thing.
Yeah, it's that autopilot, right? It's that just not boring, sorry, that normal, everyday, mundane life thing where having that opportunity to be the experiment or experiment on yourself with your feelings and different responses and reactions and behaving in a different way to the pattern that you have created or the habits you've created can lead to that. Exactly what you explained, that strange feeling of liberation that feels so foreign.
and ultimately it centers around one question, which sometimes it should be the most obvious question, but we often keep going with life and just the next thing that comes up, or we just continue on and we forget to sit back and go, what do I want? Like, what do I actually want? And it could be a matter of, I know I've defrosted the mints, but I want takeout tonight and I never do that. Or it could be, fuck man, I've always wanted to go on this holiday or see this place and it's never the right time. But like, what if I just make it when can I make it the time? Why am I not prioritizing that? Because big things and big shifts or plans or for things to change is like, you got to make moves. And a lot of people, myself included, are really bad fantasists in the sense of being like, well, if all these perfect things align, that would be great. I would do that, rather than I'm in control of my own destiny. Like, that thing of being like, well, if I had a pool, I'd swim all the time. It's like, you could swim. You probably could find somewhere you could get a membership and go swimming. But we want everything to be perfect. We want it to be, delivered on a platter. And a lot of people are, just kind of wishing and hoping and going what ifing or saying, well, yeah, in a perfect world. And it's like, I've done half the shit. I mean, when I was on holiday with my parents and we're laughing and we're parasailing or doing things, we're literally going, by rights, we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be living this life. We shouldn't be having this experience because people don't, or because who are we? It's like, the only difference is we chose to. And so like, figure out what you want and choose to do it. And okay, maybe you'll wreak some havoc and some chaos and might not be perfect, it might be messy, it might not even be what you want, but like, do it, because feeling like that energy, the worst thing is to just not release it, I think, and just sit and let it fester inside.
I'm like thinking of this moment that like, I think I have been, well, as you know, Walnut, and Kate, I have been baby stepping and planting little walnuttings along my whole journey. And how I mentioned how I aggressively, not appropriately, threw the thing. I think it was even like last year, I threw my phone across the room, not in an angry way. I just read something and got annoyed and thought, like in a split second in my head, there's a trend of me throwing things. I think I need to calm down. But also in that split second, I just thought, this is annoying me. What if I just throw my phone? And I didn't throw it hard, like it didn't crack or anything like that. But I wanted to experiment with expressing that annoyed me and not going, oh, so annoying, but I'll keep reading till the very bottom or something like that. Like, that's the kind of like split second thought that I had. And so I feel like I have planted lots of baby experimentations, little bits of like courage, not necessarily in relation to physical objects flying across the room, but to make myself get to like the point now where I am, where I can look at situations or people can tell me about moments where they're really upset, where they've behaved in a way and they don't tolerate it. They don't want to tolerate it anymore. And I can say, well, why don't you try a different response? And it's really really weird to feel like I can be that person.
Mm.
Like, and I think that's part of that changing thing for me, is that like um almost a leadership aspect to it, like a little bit more of an experienced person with walnutting and trial and erroring and experimenting. Some of them not necessarily the most positive, but I've had lessons that I can speak to and that I can teach on. And I feel like I'm in a really strange position where I used to be the one looking at people going, help me with this. And now I can actually say, well, here's what I did,
Mm.
from a really aligned place.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is the time that you've dedicated into it. Like you say, there's been trial and error, there's been experiments, there's been things that haven't gone well, and you could always take a lesson from that, like you say. But I think we do live in a time where people want things pretty instantly,
Yeah.
that fantasy thing, that Amazon Prime, that, you know, Uber culture, whatever. I'm the same of it as it too. And I think it's like that thing of being like, you've got to be willing to have that really messy in between to get to the other thing. Kind of like, if you're gonna redo your house, you're gonna have no water in your bathroom for a bit and it's freaking annoying. Or you're gonna knock down a wall and it's gonna look like chaos and it's gonna be rubble and all that stuff. And it's like, whereas we can't snap our fingers and just the house is done. And I think people think that about themselves, like, oh, I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and I'm gonna be a morning person, I'm gonna eat right, I'm gonna, find a new job and all these things. And we put so much pressure on that, just not magic, like pressure on ourselves when that just doesn't magically happen, rather
Mm.
than making those moves and slowly but surely chipping away, and like you say, not having to get it perfect all the time. And so I think that's the same with change, is like maybe breaking through and making things better in your own life also means digging through a little bit of shit for a while. And I think we've kind of been doing that for a long time without realizing it. And
Yeah.
then now that it's sort of starting to, like, the bricks are starting to like layer up, I'm like running all over the place with my analogies, but you follow. Once it's all starting to, like, now it's starting to come together, it's like, oh, that's what that was. It wasn't like a breakdown. It wasn't like a crisis. It was just renovations. like, you know?
Yeah. Yes. Oh my God. And also don't apologize ever for your analogies, because I like am a very visual person. So I imagine things when you talk. Yes. I've been renovating. My whole Walnut Wednesday journey essentially has been a renovation of my life, because it really has. And they call it
That's
personal development and
yeah,
spiritual development, spiritual psychic awakening on the
yeah.
womb tangent, because that's always paralleled. But it's just a rebuild. It's just a restructure, reframe, realigning.
The foundation's there, it's solid. It's just like, what doesn't serve me? And what have I been looking at or living with or dealing with for ages and not liked it? And like, of course, it's not going to be that quick to change it. But with whether it's I think it starts unconsciously for a lot of the time, but there's chipping away and this is change, and then things crumble or fall, or the labor hurts, and then it starts taking shape and you think, oh my goodness, was this like all part of something? Like, was this actually useful? It's really hard to know if you don't realize it. And I think, again, that's maybe why our brains go all over the place, because it's like we've like discovered some mathematical equation or something. Like, it's starting to feel like there's so, like, if anything, I feel like I can see the work that needs doing, rather than it being just stuff I'm tearing down. It's kind of like, oh, I'm feeling like, and now it's ready for all rebuilding, and oh, look, that's actually already shaping up and things, and like, I'm able to kind of see my work a little bit more, or be conscious of it, because I think we were, yeah, kind of skirting around it and getting to the core of it, and all these conversations, all the work you've been doing. But yeah, now it's starting to feel like it's taking shape, and it's chaotic but brilliant.
So I have the analogy in my brain going back to the house thing and what you were saying, like all of the last, every 10-ish episodes that we've had, they've all been sort of like scrubbing the walls before the rent inspection, just on the outside. And now both you and I have sort of come to this level at episode 150 frickin' 5, like, yay, where we're now removing the jib from the wall, and we notice that the pink bats or whatever, the inside has a bit of mold on it, and that's all our past conditioning and our traumas, and it's a bit dirty and there's like rotten bits of wood that needs to be refreshed. We're now like removing that surface layer that we've sort of been scrubbing away at, like, oh hey, look, I'm walnutting a little bit here, and and don't get me wrong, contradicting myself, every little bit does count. But now we're sort of getting into the depths of old things that have just been stuck, so sort of like a parasite to our energetic body that's always just been there, that habits that we've just let slide, and comments we've made about ourselves, I'm so fat, I'm disgusting, all of those little things have sort of gotten into the timber at the spine of the house, or the, what's that called, the structure of the house on the inside, the skeleton, right? And we're now scrubbing away at that in order to be able to put fresh new pink bats in, new jib, a new paint job. Then eventually we'll be able to, buy the furniture and move everything around airy fairy and do what we want. But we're doing like the grunt renovation work, and I feel so strongly linked to this because I still have trauma issues from renovating that I still don't ever want to touch another paintbrush ever again. Yeah. So it feels really relevant to do the house analogy.
Yeah, and because it's hard too, and sometimes there's a lot more than you thought. And sometimes, again, I'm loving the analogy, but sometimes you rip up some carpet and you're like, oh my God, there are hardwood floors under here. This is good shit. I'm keeping this. And you kind of realize, like, the way I felt about, like, you talked about emotions. I'm a very emotional person. I've always seen that I had always seen that as a weakness and something I was always trying to sort of fix. And it was more, instead of fixing, it was sort of like, well, what if we take a look at what that means and how can I make that a positive in myself and not a negative? And learning about feeling the emotions, letting them pass through, and not trying to like roadblock them and stop them and let them build up and then probably come out in terrible ways. But like, that was part of it. It wasn't like something we don't have to throw ourselves out with all of this kind of rebuilding. It's more just like digging deeper and challenging to kind of find what does it really mean? Why do I do the things I do? What's good, what's bad, or what just is that I should maybe embrace in a different way, or work on in a different way. And so that's why I think, the freedom for me is very personal. It's very internal. And I think, I take a lot of strength from that as well. Like, I love talking to my friends and family about it all, but ultimately the freedom of the expression of freedom that I feel is the idea of being like, I get to make choices. I get to make moves. I don't really rely on other people or like the fantasy world, right? Other people to kind of make my dreams come true. Everyone in my life, the good people in my life make it better. But I think that's the other thing that I've come to the conclusion of, and I've always been very independent, and I've think fully embracing that to the point where like anyone who wants to can come along, but really coming into that power too about being in control of the renovations and the rebuild and like the next moves and all that kind of stuff. And owning the failures, right? When the shit falls apart, and being like, right, try again. Like, give it another go.
Yes. And with my own current saga that I'm going through, which is a little bit more on the esoteric woo-woo side of things, I am also feeling that like less of a need for external modalities and things, and really coming into myself. And I can't remember who told me this, another analogy was about how you don't go to, and this is in relation to healing and stuff like that, so it's on my woo-woo side. You don't go to the when you break your arm and you go to see the doctor will put a cast on it and put all the things in place to heal it, but it's your bones that are doing on a cellular level the reconstructing. It's you on the inside that is doing the healing. So you can go out and get the card readings and get the energy clearings and all that kind of stuff, and those things are awesome. I get them myself, I give them myself, but use them in a way that sort of gives you that perspective, gives you that motivation or empowerment to make that small shift, because at the end of the day, it's your cells, your energy, your bones that are doing the reconstructing. And I thought that was actually quite a beautiful way to sort of look at it, is like the external things. And I speak to this all the time, Walnut. External things are really great and beneficial, and they can add value to your life. But it's you who decides to Walnut. It's you who decides to be brave. And Kate and I, we repeat this all the time, not even just online on the podcast, is you don't need to do the big, grand, amazing, quit your job and buy a one-way ticket, and that stuff's great. But you can literally start by looking at, what's in front of your nose, essentially.
And you don't have to have a plan. I think the other thing is you don't have to have a plan. I think you get this, I'm sure you've gotten this tons with Walnut Wednesday, which is, and just general, I get it sometimes with freelance. It's like, so what's the plan though? What's the career direction, or what's the ultimate goal, or how are you going to make the money, or how are you going to do the things, or whatever, right? And let's say you're sitting there and you're just thinking about certain things that you want to change or whatever. You don't necessarily have to know what is the replacement or what's the next step, but you can be like, well, what would it look like just to get rid for now of the thing that's not serving me, the thing that is kind of, not bringing me joy, or holding me back, or I'm feeling like I just generally feel like I need to be free of. And start there, right? You don't have to have some grand plan of what that's going to look like. Oh, here's my eat, pray, love plan, or here's my, career 5-year plan for my small business, and this is how much money I'll be making in 6 months time. Sometimes it's like, maybe the only way to find out what you want or what you want to do is just by getting rid of the shit that isn't working for you first.
But knowing what that is too, right? Like, what do you want? We never come back to that.
Yeah, what do you want? And like, it doesn't have to be something that is like verbal. Even I can't even explain that sometimes. I don't really know. Sometimes I just know what the next thing is, and I trust that will lead on to things, or other things will pop up, but I'm just out there sort of open to it. And that's, that's why when I came back, I don't know if this leads in well, but that's when I came back from my holiday, one thing that's been really burning a hole in the back of my brain is this passion project I've been working with, a friend of a friend, who's now, I just call her my friend, she's lovely. And I've been busy, and not like, burnt out, depressed busy, but shit's been going on, and it's been like, you really want to make this happen. If you didn't, you'd probably would have opted out of this. And I came back, I was very clear in my head, my butt was on fire from it, and we are raising money, and like, things are moving, things are happening. And it was just, I just felt like, maybe it sounds contradictory, like things had to align, but it was like, no, I had to just be like, right, what I want was this, and I knew I had to get XYZ out of the way, and I didn't have to cancel my holidays, but it was like, you want to make it happen, then don't let any other things get in the way. Once I finished, like the day I finished that holiday and I came home, it was like, this is what I want to do. And because I knew I could make a plan, which helped. So again, contradictory, but this is specific to this example.
No, but then you had the room, you had the space to be able to think about your passion project. You didn't have to now worry about all the trips that you had coming up. Like, they have gone. You've got that fresh space of like, okay, let's fucking do it.
And if you wanted to go on a macro level, like, and because I exist as a freelance producer in the world, a friend who a friend put me in contact with Michelle, who I'm partnering with on this project. And because, my friend was like, hey, I've got a friend who works in film. She might be interested. So I didn't go seeking out the project. I didn't even come up with the concept. This is a documentary. This is someone else's story, but it was exactly the kind of project I want to be part of. And that doesn't happen unless you are kind of out there being like, opportunities, it didn't just come to me. It was more just like I had to be at the party to get asked to dance kind of thing. And so sometimes just show up to the party and see what happens. Another analogy. But yeah, so I'm directing and producing a short documentary, and it's really powerful, and it kind of ties in, to a lot of stuff we're talking about going back and going to your roots. And this is literal for Michelle, who is looking into her family history, and it's that question of identity and why knowing about the past and where you come from impacts the present and future generations. So yeah, it's really powerful. And we're raising money, and we're very close to kind of booking in the really next big step for the production. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. And Walnut, this has come up in my brain a couple times when Kate's talking. Kate is an emotional authority projector. So literally this project, waiting for the invitation, she's followed her alignment and followed her emotional waves and things, went to the party, everything in a very self-reflected, looking at herself way, and then got invited to this project. So that's actually just like delicious projector alignment. Amazing, delicious. I'm a sacral generator, if you didn't know that either, Walnut. But what I would really love to do on this episode, Walnut, is actually Kate and Michelle have created a trailer of sort of what the documentary is going to be about. So it's a 2-minute clip. I will have it playing at the end. So once Kate and I clock off, just make sure you stick around for 2 more minutes. If you're not watching this on the YouTubes or on the Spotify in the video format, you'll still be able to hear it via the audio. It still all sort of makes sense. And it's a really, really cool way to see what our Kate's been up to and what you're going to be up to. And I love it. So I will play the video after this episode, but I will link the GoFundMe page if you feel like donating. If you don't want to donate, you can definitely just share, or even share this episode and tag both Kate and I and let us know that you're, been listening and that you're here. But all the information will be in the show notes and inside the walnut tree, and you can follow Kate as the journey continues on. Kate, do you want to just let the walnuts know, obviously it will be in the show notes and things, but where you hang out, and is there anything else you want to speak to a little bit more about the documentary that's in creation?
No, that was really lovely how you summed up. I like the concept film, the trailer, to kind of speak for itself, but I'd say it's called Where the Tracks Lead. And then, so you can see the clip on YouTube under Where the Tracks Lead concept film, which the link will be in there, and on Instagram as well, all my updates. So at Miss K Bromley. And I just would love any support, sharing. I mean, donating is great, but also sharing is just as helpful. And very excited to probably in the next 10 episodes have a bigger update about it.
So amazing, delicious, nutritious. Before we wrap up the episode, Kate, so we've talked to basically so all the analogies under the sun, but we've talked to sort of change, liberation. I feel like this whole episode is basically the definition of being a walnut, but change, liberation, equality, and a lot of just reflective internal work, I feel like. Do you have anything else that you feel we haven't touched on that you want to just talk to before we finish?
I don't know. I think there was so much of a stream of consciousness in there, and just the only thing to say would be sometimes you just could have these chats that are just swirling around thoughts and going all over the place, and you can come to different conclusions within them. And so it's if you don't have people to have these chats with, I've said it before, I'll say it again, make sure you have someone that you can have these rambly all over the place chats. And it's so cool to have a platform with you, Lara, to have them, you know, and some people will be like, I resonate with that, which is great. But I think it's all part of the fun and games as well, to go out for a drink and just be like, I feel like things are changing, and just let it out, because that might help you work out what you should do next as well.
Totally. Yes. And Walnut, like, you are like a fly on the wall, because how Kate and I talk on the podcast episodes is literally exactly how we talk on offline when we're not recording. These are our actual conversations. So I'm actually really glad that we're both in a weird place of transition and curiosity, because you get to see firsthand like how all the feelings are bubbling up, what we're sort of thinking about in real time. And then maybe later in the next sort of 10 episodes, not only will we be able to share documentary from Kate updates, but also we might have some kind of like delicious teachable moments from this current saga, which is amazing. So I actually just feel really fortunate and privileged that we're both, of course, Kate, going through very similar topics at the same time, but I actually really like that there wasn't actually a potential structure to this heart ramble.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm like, transition, renovation, liberation. That's what it is.
I love that. I love that so much. So Walnut, if you enjoyed this episode, share and tag Kate and I on your social medias. We'd love to hear from you. Please feel free to join the Walnut Tree if you want to further the discussion. If you have any commentary or questions about particular parts of this episode, Kate will be back. And if you want to hear us chat about them more, please do comment in the Walnut Tree, because I'm very curious to hear from you and what you think about these particular things, especially if you've been going through it yourself. But Kate, the token question, what does being a walnut mean to you? Have you progressed this feeling in terms of what currently? I've been tentative to ask it for this episode because everything is so like feels really wishy-washy at the moment, but have you got anything this week?
Yeah, I mean, I say yeah because that's what I think initially. I don't know, maybe being a walnut is just not having all the plans but just making the moves anyway. And not having all the words, but just speaking anyway as well, which is like sums up today. But just like go with the feeling, embrace it, and see where it takes you. And you don't always have to know exactly where the destination is. Just trust in it.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here for our 155th episode. Kate, I don't need to tell you how much I love you or let the walnuts know how much I love you, because it's very obvious that I do. And I appreciate your talks, your time, your friendships, and well, friendship with me, but I mean your other ones too. I'm glad you have friends. And Walnut, thank you for your time and for being here. And I just appreciate you listening to my voice practice, and also like all the wonderful people that I bring on. So you are just as much appreciated as my Kate, who I appreciate and adore and will love until the end of time. So thank you, Kate, again.
I love you.
I love you. Have a happy Walnut Wednesday, and I will talk to you on the podcast next week.
I have Austrian citizenship by way of my grandfather because Austria passed a law in 2020 that stated any Holocaust victims or descendants of Holocaust victims can apply for Austrian citizenship as a way to welcome them back home. Do you know how difficult it was for me to find information? How do you prove that you're Jewish? What documentation do I have? Thankfully, my grandfather registered himself many years ago in Israel as Austrian. So there was that. But then how do I prove that relationship? He changed his name. He didn't want to have any association with what had happened. There's so much missing. There's so much that has happened in my family's history that hasn't been documented. And I would love to be able to provide some sort of answer. The ultimate goal of this project and this journey is to document my trip to where it all happened, where the genocide of my family, of that side of my family, happened in Auschwitz. And I really would like to highlight that this still affects generations today. It affects generations of people who don't look like what society thinks Jewish people should look like. I hope to have a spiritual experience and to kind of say, sorry it took me this long, but I got here. And I hope that I'm able to share it. Hope that it helps somebody, even if it's just me.